Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Jackson, and I'm a nonprofit management fellow for Women's Public Leadership Network, WPLN for short. WPLN is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization, and we work to educate, organize, and inspire women to seek office at every level to become effective leaders. I'm so excited to welcome everybody back to our latest WPLN Tips from the Trail, which is our programming series where we interview women who hold public office, where they share their journey with us, including their achievements, challenges, and some words of wisdom. Today, I have the great privilege and pleasure to interview Marion County Superior Court Judge Amy Jones. I was first introduced to Judge Jones almost a year ago, and she has been an amazing mentor figure for me and has played a major role in helping me navigate my career path. So, Judge Jones, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. And if you have any questions for Judge Jones, just make sure you comment them in the comment section.
Well, thanks for having me, Grace. I appreciate it. I'm totally informal, so please call me. I'm excited to be here and kind of learn from all of you as well, but I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you. So, Amy, to start off, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background? Was there any experiences in particular that kind of shaped your decision to pursue a legal career, and how did that interest evolve into your decision to pursue a judgeship?
Yeah, I have always been, I've always enjoyed politics. I've been interested in government from a very young age. My father was a public school superintendent and was, because of that, involved with the General Assembly here in Indiana, would come down and lobby, of course, for budget and funding and things like that. And my parents thought it was really important to understand that civic side of things. And so, we would make a 3-hour drive from northeastern Indiana. And, when I found out, oh, you could be a page when you're, a young kid. And you can also, when I was in college at Purdue, I applied to be a Senate intern, and I got to do an internship for the long budget session one year. So it just got me kind of introduced to some of our lawmakers. I thought it was really fascinating. And so I'd say from very early on, I was really interested just in government and politics and the law. And so when I was in college, like I said, I was at Purdue University. I thought I would end up being, I wanted to work on campaigns. I wanted to run campaigns. That was, exciting to me. And it was one of those things where, as I got into my senior year, I thought, well, I need to figure out how I want to do this. And law school was an option. And I thought that was one pathway. I was really focused on public relations, and that was my background. And so I just started getting involved with student government on the university level. And then also it just kind of continued to grow from there. I got involved with some campaigns, just grassroots, making lots of phone calls, walking a lot of miles. And so that's really just the more I got involved, the more interested I got.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I forgot to mention that Amy is a fellow Boilermaker. So that's where I go to school. So that's an interesting connection. And I also think that it's really awesome that your passion was instilled in you at a young age. And that's definitely something that I can relate to. Along your way of this career path, what skills have you found to be like a non-negotiable in your career?
Well, I think definitely for being a judge, you have to be just a very engaged and active listener to what's going on around you, and patience. That is key, and it's taken me a long time. I'm not the most patient person in the world, so it is a skill that I work on every single day, because I think it's very important that when litigants, when people come before the court, that they feel as though they are being heard, that they are having their moment. And so it is a skill that is it's honed over time. But I go back a lot to right after I first got on the bench, I had seen this Maya Angelou quote, which was basically one of these things that, the people are going to forget what you say, they're going to forget what you do, but they are never going to forget how you made them feel. And so that is one of the things that I just really kind of try to keep in my mind, that, a lot of times people don't remember what I say. They are in
Mhm.
court on a bad day, could be the worst day of their lives. They are nervous. They are, they're just trying to stay with it and in the moment. But the one thing a lot of people have commented that I've had come before me, or lawyers have shared with me after the fact, is that, you know, how I react and respond
Mhm.
to those people in the courtroom and putting them at ease, that that's what they remember. They're not going to remember exactly what I told them, but they will remember feeling heard, feeling that they got an opportunity and that they were treated fairly and respectfully.
Yeah. No, I love that philosophy, and I think that you mentioning that, you're seeing these people on their worst day, and just having that philosophy in mind is really inspiring. So, speaking of you interacting with these people on a daily basis, how has your experience on the bench shaped your understanding of the law and how it impacts these individuals and the community?
I think one of the ways is that I think people always look at a judge and they're going to be, they're going to treat me fairly. Or how are they looking at me when I come up to the table and sit down? Are they sizing me up or whatever? But the flip side of that coin is what I've learned is that when they come into court, they are immediately sizing me up, and they
Mm,
are wanting to know, am I going to get a fair shake from this woman who probably has no idea where I come from and what
mhm,
I deal with on a daily basis. And so it started to become real clear to me early on. And I'd practiced criminal law for a long time. I was a deputy prosecutor. I did defense work. So I've done both sides. But the one nice thing about the role I'm in as a judge now, I still do the criminal cases. I have a
mhm,
regular docket that I hear misdemeanors and level 6 felonies, but I also preside over our mental health alternative courts, which is a diversionary effort for those individuals who have been arrested and charged with a crime, but their mental illness was a factor in that happening. And so it's a opportunity to receive treatment and move forward. And so one of the things that I have learned, because I get to see those participants so much more often than the
mhm.
people on my traditional court docket. And I like that because I get to have more of an opportunity to speak with them personally. I get to know them. I get to know about their families. And so that has changed me, I think, quite a bit because I've had some very frank conversations with some of our participants. And so I have one gentleman that I've really treasured getting to know because he's in his 40s now. He does have a serious mental illness, and for him, 40s was beyond his life expectancy. He thought, from the world he came from, I'm not going to, if I live past 21, that's
Yeah.
success to me. And he was very much engaged in the drug trade, and his older children saw that and they knew what that was like. And he flat out told me, I don't trust white people. I do not trust you. How can I trust you?
Mhm.
And so it was many, many months, and we went through highs and lows and relapses and a lot, and we stuck with, and he saw that I stuck with him
Mhm.
because I'm like, hey, there's a lot of workability here. You are working. You know what? This is not a linear path to recovery. And, just because you hit a stumbling block does not mean this is over. And
Mhm.
so I'm like, it's very easy to get into my court, and I try to make it very hard to get out. You are going to stay. We're going to work through this together. And so he finally got to the point where he was like, he brought so he had an older son, and he was
Mhm.
starting to deal with the same problems with him as that he
Yeah.
had when he was in his upper teens. And he's like, I just don't want this path for him. I
Mhm.
don't want it. And he's used to seeing the money coming in.
Yeah.
He'd make money illegally. He's like, now the money's not there because I'm not
Mhm.
in that trade anymore. But he wants to follow that. But I've got this 4-year-old at home. So we started bringing him to court with me. And he would bring him up to the bench, and he'd never met anyone like me before.
Yeah.
And he wanted his son to know that it's okay. You
Mhm.
can trust people. Even if they don't look like you know what? There are people out there, you've got to give them a chance. And he graduated successfully. He's just done a really wonderful he's got a wonderful family, and is really excelling. But that meant a lot to me, really learning. It took a long time to break that barrier. And for him to feel that level of comfort to actually introduce me to his young child and be like, hey,
Yeah.
she's okay, you know. And so we had a really nice relationship, even though it really developed unexpectedly
Yeah.
and out of a really difficult time in his life. And so that's what I have enjoyed most about being on the bench, is having those kind of connections and that sort of an impact with having a problem solving court, that you get to do that have that more of a personal level with participants.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think that that kind of plays into what you had said about patience being such a big factor. And it's awesome that that's the role that you get to play, and you really like get to play an instrumental role in kind of how these individuals' lives play out. So that's amazing. We do have a comment from the audience. Do you find there are unique challenges you face as a woman in a traditionally male-dominated field?
There are, and there can be, you know. It was really interesting. So when I took the bench, I was 38, and I've been on for 12 years, so you can figure it out. But when I took the bench, we were also in our old courthouse, and so I had our own little court office
Mhm.
area. And now our office is worth the new community justice campus, so we have a different layout of our courthouse now. But at that time, you know, my office door, I walked right out into the front office area
Mhm.
where my bailiffs and all my staff were. And that was common for me to be out there before court started and kind of
Yeah.
rummaging around, getting things ready to go. And I had an out of county lawyer that I had never met before, happened to have a case in my court. And he came up to me and, oh, do you mind making a copy of this plea agreement for me? Sure. Made a copy of the plea, gave it to him, and then a couple minutes later, I come out the back door in my robe, and his face was like, "Oh my gosh." And it's like, you know,
The
it is, hey,
assumptions.
the assumptions that you make, you know, whatever, it's all right. He didn't know who I was. I didn't know who he was, but you know what? I'm going to help you out because I know um, this is going to move my session along a little
Yes,
quicker if we have
yes.
these copies and we're ready to go. So anyway, it was kind of got a little chuckle about it afterwards, but it's not uncommon that a lot of female judges, you are assumed that you're not the judge. You must
Mhm.
be, you know, someone else that's a support in a supporting role. And so that was kind of interesting real early on. But you know, you still do face those situations where, you know, I think a lot of times, you know, you've got more than 50% of women now going to that are enrolled in law school.
Mhm.
You know, we are about, it's pretty equally balanced, you know, but you still have those generational gaps and the generational sort of influences where, you know, I'm not going to get invited out to play a round of golf, you know, with the group of, you know, the older men or something like that. That's
Mhm.
not going to happen. And so, I mean, I can definitely see though in the office environment though that because it is more equalized now,
Mhm.
just the tenor and tone of what goes on just within the office has changed significantly, you know. And so, you know, we are doing more things to build camaraderie, you know, but you still have those things where there's a lot of networking that takes place. There's a lot of private conversations and things like that that still go on that you're not invited into. But
Mhm.
I think we've made leaps and bounds, you know, with sort of collegial type
Yes.
activities, you know, just, you know, it within the office that it's broken some barriers, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. No, I think that I agree that there has been a shift, especially in the legal field, that there has been the statistics are growing, which is encouraging, especially as someone that's on the pre-law path.
Yeah.
So switching more towards your leadership, you've held significant roles, including serving as the presiding judge of Marion Supreme Court. So what are some key challenges you feel like you faced during your time leading the court? And if you could just explain how you navigated those challenges.
So I've been on the bench. It's been 12 years. 6 of those years I've spent on what's called our executive committee. I spent 2 years as our presiding judge. And so essentially we have 36 Superior Court judges and 1 circuit court judge. So on the Superior Court side, we elect the executive committee. They handle the budget, the basically procedures, set policy for the court and things like that. And you
Mhm.
serve a 2-year term. So I've done that quite a bit. I got involved very early on in my tenure on the bench, and it's very helpful for me to kind of understand the inner workings of just the judiciary as well as how we interact with the other branches of government. And so working with stakeholders and things like that to make the whole system better is really your overarching goal. But I will say, since I've been on the bench, I think the last 10 years have really been the most transformative for the legal system. I mean, we've gone paperless. When I first came in, we were dealing with paper files. So getting to the point, we've gone through just massive changes. So getting people to give up their paper, and I still love my paper, but giving that up and, going to online case management, filings, things like that. That was a huge shift for people. And that was kind of the first time we started seeing people, you know what, I'm close to retirement. I may just do it. I don't want to learn something new. So we went through that phase, and going completely to the just technology. The changes there have been really significant. Then we had COVID and navigating COVID and how we were going to be able to keep operations open. I was the presiding judge for part of that. How to keep people safe when they were coming in. How to keep we have over 3,000 inmates in our jail, and how are we going to manage that traffic and bringing people in and out of the courtroom? So it was that was a very difficult time, but some great things came out of it. And we've learned, we stood up a virtual, court experience within a very short window of time because we had to, and we've, developed that more since COVID. And, it's become a great tool. It's become a great tool for lawyers, for their clients. So it is nice to have that available. It might not have happened if we weren't forced to do it. And so that was a significant change as well. And then once COVID goes away, the return to work. And what does that look like? We had gone where we allowed our staff to have a pretty flexible remote working environment. And so just like with all other businesses and corporations, they had to navigate that as well. So did we. But we had to keep our doors open the whole time, and we had to continue to operate. So that was probably the most challenging time. We had a lot of just institutional changes, as well as changes that were forced upon us just due to, the pandemic. So when you've got 36 people that have their own unique way of operating, and they all think that my way is the best way, those were some of the most difficult conversations to have, and to try to build consensus with them that, because we had the spectrum. We had people that were like, absolutely, I'm not wearing a mask. We had other people that were like, you're not coming near me without one. And so just navigating that and how we worked that through those times was extremely difficult. So I kind of look back on it now, that was really the, don't move my cheese moment within our operations, because people don't want their cheese moved. They don't want to have to do that. And so I think for me, that was the most challenging few years. It was about a 4-year period there. That was the most difficult for me. And then you're just trying to run your own court on top of it. So
that is definitely an interesting time to be leading that. And I agree that I feel like there was a culture shift worldwide during that time. And so it's interesting to get to hear kind of how that applied to your position at the time. And the virtuals kind of court hearings, I have gotten to see those when I go in and observe court. And I agree, I feel like they're very time efficient. I've seen one happen within 5 minutes and they're just in and out of there. So it's interesting that that's something that I've gotten to witness, and you're kind of there during that transition.
I've heard, it's just another tool in our toolbox. It's a great thing for us to have. You've got people that aren't having to take off time from work and come down and burn a half day, driving down here. The lawyers enjoy the flexibility of it. They're not in the car driving all over to various counties for hearings. And so, it's definitely, and our Supreme Court was really, they were great leaders in pushing this through as well, that, it is here to stay, but how do we make it work and but ensure that people are getting what they need at the same time.
Yes, definitely a big shift there. So at WPLN, we are working to build a network of support for women leaders. So did you have any women help you on your journey? And if so, what made them mentors? And do you have any advice on how to cultivate mentor-mentee relationships?
I think I also I feel like a little bit goes back to kind of where I'm at in life and age. And so I look back, I mean, I've been an attorney now for about 25 years.
Mhm.
So I feel like when I first started, the women that were kind of like 20 plus years into their
Mhm.
careers at that time really paved the way
Mhm.
for kind of that next generation. But I still felt as though there was a lot of there was a lot of concern about lending that hand because you could potentially be competition. So when I
Mhm.
started running for office, the first race I ran for in 2010 I lost. But it was for a small claims court judge, but it was a really great experience. I got
Mhm.
to meet a lot of wonderful people. I volunteered. Anybody that needed help, I did it. I was making phone calls and I was walking all over the place and, going door to door.
Mhm.
And so it got my name out there just because I was willing to be present, I was engaged, and I was willing to just help in whatever somebody
Mhm.
needed. And so even though I lost, 2 years later, there was going to be a Superior Court election coming up. And I started thinking, you know what? I've got a lot of momentum right now. I've
Mhm.
been really involved. People across the whole county know who I am. I've been showing up to township meetings. We've got 9 townships. There's meetings every month. I've been doing a lot for candidates. They know me. And it was like I wasn't necessarily looking for that Superior Court opportunity. I liked the small claims court option because it was part-time at that point and I could keep my law practice going. But when I started looking at where I was at in my life and looking at there were 4 people retiring. There was going to be 4 new judges coming on
Yeah.
that in 2012. And I was like, you know what? I wasn't looking for the opportunity. It kind of found me. And I thought if if I'm a betting person, this is a good, I've got good odds now. I
Mhm.
should keep it going. And so that's what I did. And there were a lot of great it was a little rough, I will say that, because you've got all these people that are going for the 10 spots.
Mhm.
And so there wasn't a lot of help going back and forth there with some people that ended up you end up working with. But I think um I think now there's no longer that
Yeah.
feeling of you might be competition and I've got
Mhm.
to be watchful of you. I don't want to necessarily give you too much of a leg up because you could be
Yes.
gunning for me. I felt as though that was the perception that
Mhm.
some of the women in leadership roles had.
Yeah.
Not so much, the politicians and things like that, but just the ones that were interested in the judgeships. And
Mhm.
so um I think getting outside of that circle and being with other women who were just in leadership roles that were not maybe, you know, running, that was very helpful.
Mhm.
And so I think that was important just to kind of keep that because it could drive you crazy,
Yeah.
but it was a good experience. They've changed the way we are elected now. So that first go round, I did run, and now they've changed the statute where we go in front of a judicial nominating committee.
Oh, okay.
They find that we are, um, they vet us essentially.
Mhm.
We go through an application and interview process, and then we stand for retention on the ballot. So I'm very honored that this last Tuesday that I was retained. So that was great
Yes,
news. So I was
congratulations. I did
really
see
happy
that. I
about
should have
that.
mentioned that earlier. So
Thanks.
congratulations on that.
Thanks.
So has the campaign process, like versus when you ran initially, is there still kind of that aspect of it, or is it more just, making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing to make sure that you have that reputation?
Well, now it's like the really for us, it's even though we have to declare a political party, it's not on the ballot. So the voters don't know of what party you are
Mhm.
attached with or affiliated with. So it is really, and we're not allowed to partake in
Mhm.
political events. So, those things, those meetings that I used to go to and see, political people at, I'm not allowed to go to those anymore. I'm not allowed to make certain donations or
Mhm.
contributions. But and that is really to help preserve the integrity of the judiciary, because, what does that look like? When I'm a judge and I need to raise a lot of money to run a
Mhm.
countywide campaign, and who's writing me checks? Well, it'd be checks probably from lawyers, because they're the ones that know me best. The
Yeah.
same lawyers that would come in and appear before me and represent clients. And so
Uh-huh.
that was a big part of that shift, especially in the larger metropolitan areas. The smaller counties, it is that more traditional process of, um, the traditional campaign, and the
Yeah.
voters electing a judge. But when you are talking about some of these large metropolitan areas where you're going to have to raise a million plus to run you know a campaign
Mhm.
countywide, well, what does that look like? And
Yeah.
so it really took that piece, it removed that from the picture. And so there are several counties in the state of Indiana, Allen, Lake, the larger counties, that have this type of a selection process that is in place.
Yeah.
So,
That's very
so it is a
interesting.
little different for me now. I don't get to, I follow politics, but I don't get to be engaged like I used
Uh-huh.
to.
No, that's very interesting. That wasn't even something that I had considered, but that's very insightful. Since we've been kind of talking about your career path, and kind of just like the steps that you've taken to get where you are, I was wondering, what's the most rewarding part aspect of serving in leadership, and kind of how do you stay motivated to continue to do your work when it can be a very taxing job?
Yeah, it can be, and it can be really a kind of a thankless job at times. It's not something you're going to go in and you're wanting to look for. You've got to find your own joy in
Mhm.
in your job, because it's not something where people are going to be like patting you on the back and telling you, "Hey, you're doing a great job."
Yeah.
It just kind of is the nature of it. But to have those moments like I get to have with, certain people that do come to court before me, especially, I think the most rewarding experience for me is just presiding over the problem solving courts. That is absolutely not something I was interested in, or even thought about doing. But when I came in, when I first was elected and I was assigned this particular
Mhm.
court, at the time it was Court 8, and the judge who retired, um, it was her kind of baby. She was a nurse by trade before she became a lawyer and then a judge. And so she was very interested in mental health
Mhm.
and how that impacted people in the criminal justice system. And so I just inherited a few of those cases.
Mhm.
And then over time, I really dug in and I was like, this is very important. People, I think I just had a very narrow mindset when I was a young deputy prosecutor, that, people are going to go away and I'm doing my
Yep.
job. And, but you know what? They're going to come back in a few months, or they're going to come back in a few years. And if the root problems have not been addressed, we're going to see them again. And so it continues to be those root problems of, homelessness and access to services and connections. And so I feel like, I've got a team of people that I work with that help our participants with case. They provide case management, and whether it's, you know, giving them a bus pass, helping them figure out and navigate how they are going to get from point A to point
Yeah.
B, getting them screened while they're in jail for treatment, getting them transported from point A to point B, setting them up for the biggest likelihood of success.
Mhm.
And that's what I feel like my job is now, especially with this population, is I want you to succeed. I'm not going to just like have you, or they're going to open the door at the backside of the jail and you walk out onto the street and there's no support, because that is a recipe for disaster and it's
Mhm.
really setting them up for failure. So I really try to find, and that's what my team and I do every week. We spend 2 full days. We've got 2 full dockets of these
Mhm.
types of individuals that are part of our program. And it's just, I was just dealing with it a few minutes ago. We
Yeah.
had a young man just walk in downstairs, and he didn't come to court yesterday. I issued a warrant for him, but we're going to deal with it. We figured out where he
Yeah.
was, figured out what's going on, and we address it. And that's a problem solving court. We
Mhm.
solve problems. And so to me, that's been the most rewarding part of this journey.
Mhm.
And I'm so happy I stumbled into it.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a really common misconception too, especially when you're on the opposite side of the legal system where it's kind of hard to understand that you do want these people to succeed.
Mhm.
And I do think that the culture shift towards mental health awareness has been really productive in the court system. So I am happy that you brought that up because I do think that that's been kind of a good shift.
Yeah.
So the last question that I have for you to end us off is, what key pieces of advice would you give to young women entering the legal profession like myself, especially those aiming for leadership positions? And
Sure.
how do you think that they can prepare themselves for the challenges that they could face?
I think the best way is just exposure. I mean, when I graduated from law school, I thought I'd be totally prepared to walk in on day one of my job. And the only reason I was prepared to some extent, just a little, I mean, I wasn't completely,
Yeah.
but was because of my internship opportunities I took advantage of. So that to me is huge. I'm a huge proponent of, you know, just being there, even if it's, hey, can I shadow? Can I come in and just watch and see how this works? I mean, you brought up a great point about how now it's awesome to just be able to, you can watch hearings.
Mhm.
The things are live streamed now. I did that during the pandemic too.
Mhm.
I watch other judges.
Yeah.
I learn from them things that they do and bring up that I may not have thought of, and how can I implement that and make my court
Yeah.
run better. So, I would encourage that as much as possible. Just make the call or send the email. I have people reach out to me all the time. I invite them to come into court, hang out with them afterwards if they have any questions. But I think that's the best thing, is just to get that. You've got the skills, the educational piece, but then you learn so much more, I think, through those practical experiences. So I would just encourage everybody, just, trying to come into this profession, that seek out those opportunities wherever you
Yeah.
can.
And I think that speaks a lot. I think that a lot of people underestimate the role that just being willing to send the email, like you said,
Yeah.
or being willing to show up. I think that that's something that I have tried to implement. And, that's where I stumbled across meeting you and
Yeah.
being able to have this mentorship. So I do think that that speaks a lot. So I did want to thank you again, Amy, for giving us your words of wisdom. And as we wrap up the programming, is there any last words that you would like to end with?
The worst thing that anybody can do is just say, no, I'm not interested. But I
Yes.
will tell you, I think most of the time, the majority of the time, people are going to say yes and be more than willing to just at least talk to you,
Yeah.
and I think that, or I've had people like reach out to me, and maybe it's not something that I can help with, but we all know someone who can. And
Mhm.
just, help make that warm handoff,
Yeah.
make that connection. And I think that's the best thing any of us can really do. So,
Yeah.
you know, I, I'm excited about the future of aspiring women and being
Yes.
involved and engaged in our community and the civic process. And so I think programs like this are wonderful, and I'm glad that they're becoming more common, and
Mhm.
it's the best way to build a network of supportive people to be around. So thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. It's honestly been such a pleasure. So I wanted to take this time to remind the audience, if you joined the live stream late or you would like to go back and watch this interview, the programming will be available on our YouTube channel, which is just Women's Public Leadership Network. And this is also a good time to encourage you to follow our social media at WPL Network. And our website is also a valuable resource and gives some information about the kind of work that we do. And that is where you can find our free training resources if you're interested in getting involved. If you have any additional questions for Amy, feel free to reach out to our email at hello@womenspublicleadership.net. So, just as a recap, WPLN is a nonprofit organization that equips women to run for all levels of office, pursue government appointments, and engage in the political process. And I'm also very excited to announce our fourth annual National Summit, which will be held in Orlando, Florida this year from June 5th through the 7th. And early bird registration is now open on our website if you're interested in attending this event. So I want to thank you again, Amy, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
All right. Thank you.